Welcome back everyone. Today we will be discussing the Jordan 1 Shadow 2.0 once again. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Jordan 1 Shadow 2.0 and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications. This way you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates such as shock drops, be sure to follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, and also personals for you. For those who don't know, the Jordan 1 Shadow 2.0 releases tomorrow, May 15th. Retail will be $170 for men's sizes and $130 for grade school. Be sure to watch my How to Cop video if you have not yet and you happen to be watching this before the drop. Otherwise, let's continue. In order to determine if the Jordan 1 Shadow 2.0 will be a fruitful hold, we will first cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time. And finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding? Not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather the hold margin over X period of time. Essentially, are these actually going to be worth your time or not? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, the stock for all sizes combined worldwide is under 130,000 pairs. This is just slightly more than what we normally see for Jordan 1 highs. In addition to the high stock, they have also had pretty high demand as well. Although it's not quite as high as the Hyper Royals or even the University Blue Jordan 1s, the high demand is certainly evident. This is reflected in the already absolutely insane sale volume for these. Bids are still looking good as well, better than the patinas were pre-drop at least, not to mention these have also had significantly more stock than those patinas. Due to the high stock combined with the pretty solid demand, I'm expecting all sizes, men and grade school, to be profitable with a good margin. Now, regarding a specific range, prices have already seen the vast majority of their decline following the early access pairs going into circulation, pre-sales from the confirmed Flex app reservations, and some general early pairs. This leaves the current and pre-drop average prices from $7.5 to $12 on average at about $267. This is much better than the patinas, which we discussed in the last video, but you will still see that these will react in a proportional manner initially. You'll see what I'm discussing. We normally see a notable change post-US drop. This is when we normally experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. You guys should know what I'm referring to by now, as we discuss this every single video. Regarding the impulsivity effect, if you guys haven't watched my seller hold videos before, sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop. That 10% isn't always the case, such as when a sneaker is already slightly overvalued, where we see less than a 10% increase. A recent example was for the Jordan 4 University Blue, where I predicted rather than 10%, we would only see about a 5% increase, which was exactly what occurred post-drop. Following that, they also dropped to the predicted 341 average now that pairs are in circulation, as you can see. Regarding these Shadow Jordan 1s though, although I don't feel that they are too overvalued, I do feel it's important to consider the slightly higher stock on these. To put this into perspective, we're getting over 42,000 men's pairs on Nike Sneakers US alone. Therefore, I'm only expecting about a 5% increase from the impulsivity effect on these, and that primarily just derives from the high stock. Now, you can see what I mean in regards to reacting proportionally to the patina Jordan 1s, although for completely different reasons in fact. The patinas only saw a 5% increase due to lack of demand despite the low stock. These, on the other hand, are the opposite of that. This 5% increase rather than 10% derives from the influx in stock despite high demand. In fact, we may even see slightly less than a 5% increase. This should leave us with a post-drop average of about 280 and possibly slightly lower. This is certainly really solid for a Jordan 1 high, especially with high stock. Unfortunately, I can't see a 10% increase for these, as that would leave the average just shy of $300. I hope I'm wrong, because that would mean they'll be more profitable, and that means we make more money, of course. Unfortunately, that's not what I'm predicting as of now with the data I'm given. Keep this number in mind because we'll be revisiting this number when discussing the most optimal times to sell at. Keep in mind, this will just be a post-drop price for a finite period of time. This will change as shipments do go out. Now let's discuss what price it will look like once shipments go out in that 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation. Aside from the pairs that already went into circulation through the exclusive access drop, the in-store pairs, and general early pairs. When it comes to these decent sized releases, the effects are normally very noticeable, often up into around 15%. When it comes to the patina pair, I stated that I only expected about a 10% decrease since many were already in circulation and they were rather limited still. That's nearly exactly what we saw. If anything, we even saw less of a decrease by a very minor amount. When it comes to the Jordan 1 Shadows, on the other hand, I do not see this being the case. With these, there was no early Europe drop, and the stock is higher than the usual Jordan 1 high, rather than lower. Therefore, I'd give these at least 15% room to decrease from their post-drop prices. This would then leave prices at about $240 on average for men's sizes, meaning some would be lower and some would be higher, thus deriving the average, of course. Evidently, this is still easy profit with or without tax. It's a good margin, but it's still shy of what we would consider to be a great margin, or definitely not an incredible margin. Easy money regardless. As for grade school pairs, they should also react proportionally, and I'll still be going for all sizes full throttle. Now, with the average price ranges at those points in time evident, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease. The first thing that stands out when it comes to the Jordan 1 Shadows is the slightly higher stock. The amount of stock is pretty high, but I don't feel it's at the point where this alone would cause them to decrease in value further. However, I do feel it's enough to delay the growth for these for a notable amount of time. I know we already discussed this, but you'll see where I'm going with this. The first Jordan 1 to compare these two that stuck out to me was the Varsity Red Jordan 1 85 cut. Since these share the same exact color blocking, rather than white, we have the black mid panel, black toe box, and a tonal swoosh which matches the rest of the shoe rather than normal black swoosh. Furthermore, they also both represent the inverse of an iconic sought-after colorway, the band or bread one you could say for the Varsity Reds, and the shadow one for these. Those Varsity Reds currently go for around $550 to $600 on average. Here's the catch though, those were limited to only 23,000 pairs. On Nike Sneakers US alone, not including Access, we have almost doubled this amount at 42,000 pairs when it comes to the Shadow 2.0. Most importantly, even those Varsity Reds that are so limited at only 23,000 pairs, they have been a subpar hold, hardly increasing by a notable amount at all since their release at the start of 2020. In fact, if you're not considering the post-shipment price, but rather the prices right after the drop, they've even went down a significant amount. I'm not saying that these won't go up eventually. In fact, I believe they will. However, you can see that they have been in kind of a plateau for about a year now. In fact, more than a year at this point. Now you consider the Jordan 1 Shadow 2.0s with the same color blocking but significantly more stock at about half the price of the Varsity Reds. Because of where I feel these will settle at when shipments come in, I do feel that these do have room to grow, but over the next year and a half, I do feel that for the most part, it'll be a plateau with very minor increases towards the end. Finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially, are these actually worth your time or not? The positive for these is that I'm expecting them to settle in that $240 range when shipments come in, which leaves a whole lot of room to grow and allow for a decent ROI. However, you also need to consider what I was mentioning earlier and why I don't think we'll be seeing a significant increase for these in the near future, but rather a plateau for the most part. Another pair that I wanted to compare these with is the Jordan 1 Pine Green, which was a lot more similar in terms of stock and also shares the same color blocking with a black panel, black toe box, and a tonal swoosh. These actually increased by a decent amount, on the other hand, despite them being bricks initially. Granted, these had less demand than the Shadow 2.0, so at the very least, I do feel that the Shadow 2.0s can eventually get to those prices within a year and a half, and most likely even more than that, so the low to mid 300 range. That's a pretty solid ROI when it comes to the pine greens, considering those were initially going for $190 when shipments were out, while these on the other hand I'm expecting to be around in the $240 range when shipments go out. Now that $50 difference makes a massive dent in the potential ROI for these, not to mention if you had in-store pairs, early access pairs, or even fast shipments, you could have took advantage of that impulsivity effect, get more than that $240, and perhaps up into that $270 to $280 range, which isn't even that far from the peak of what the pine greens are at right now. So even when we do start to see that increase with these, I don't feel that the ROI will be very impressive. If these do hypothetically get to that 320 range within a year or 1.5 years, which I do feel is possible, from that 240 post-shipment range, that's less than a 30% ROI, which is below our average ROI for a hold within 12 to 14 months. Overall, I rated this a 3 out of 10 hold, below average, but still not terrible. It could be much worse, of course. I do believe that these will eventually see an increase. In fact, I think in over 1.5 years, we'll even see these surpass the pine green prices right now. Regardless, the ROI within that period certainly isn't the best. Therefore, I gave it that rating. Overall, I will be quick selling all of my pairs and taking my easy profit. I do feel that there are better opportunities out there than these. This is disappointing because I honestly have been wanting to discuss a hold with you guys for the past 4 to 5 videos. They've been all quick sells, and that really sucks because I do like to diversify. So to compensate for that, I did want to briefly mention at least a recent release that I like in terms of holding long term. Although I'm not going to do a full analysis on it, I do want to briefly discuss the SB Dunk Low Stingwater Magic Mushroom. Although I haven't given these as much time as I have for the Shadow 2.0s, what really stood out for me on these is that only 2,000 pairs were loaded onto Nike Sneakers US alone. Demand isn't the best for these, likely because there is no normal swoosh on them, rather they just have a small swoosh, and they do have that icy bottom, which is a little different than usual. Regardless, I do feel that these have really solid long-term hold potential. I unfortunately didn't have enough time to make the video for these, nor a full in-depth analysis, but I do want to say that I really do see very good potential in these just because of that extremely low stock, and we've seen what happens to dunks with extremely low stock like this, and in comparison to many of those dunks that we've been seeing where they're already in that $600 to $500 range, these are right now only in about the $300 range, so that leaves a whole lot of room to grow. Also, just a note in general for anyone considering holding any items who have low capital, you should never hold anything in general if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you need money to go for drops, try to sell these during the impulsivity effect, as I was discussing before. Let me know what you guys are doing with your pairs in the comments down below. Since this is just a discussion at the end of the day, I'm just sharing my notions with you guys, and I want you guys to do the same because I could very well be completely incorrect. Anyway, good luck on this drop, or congrats if you already copped these. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, or if you perhaps learned a thing or two. Subscribe and enable post notifications just to stay 100% updated on all hype sneaker releases. Remember, if you guys need proxies or Nike sneakers accounts, be sure to check the links in the description below for TARS and KIP proxies. And of course, follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, and personals for you, so you guys always stay 100% updated on everything. With that though, I will see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day.